when I was on my mission, I knew nothing about Japan. Like, literally, the only words I knew were, like, sushi and konnichiwa and handa, and, like, yeah, it was bad when it first started. And so I was really curious because I'd been living in Japan for maybe, like, 6 months, probably not even that long, maybe 4 or 5 months, and I started to get really curious about the history of Japan because there's so much there. There's so many old buildings and temples and all of this cool stuff, and I just had no idea what the history of Japan was like. And at the time, my companion that I was living with, she was Japanese. And so one night before we went to bed, I asked her to tell me the history of Japan. And she was like, I can't. And I didn't really understand why, because, I mean, like, American history is pretty simple. Like, we were a colony, and then there was a big war, and then we became our own country, and then there was the Civil War, and World War I, and World War II. It's really short. Well, this semester in school, I'm taking a Japanese history and culture class, and there's so much to Japanese history I just didn't understand before. Japanese history literally starts, I think, around 2000 or 1000 BC. Is the first time that they found any, like, documented things from it. They've found, like, pieces of pottery, and they have some records from China, but they didn't have like their own writing system for a long time. And when they finally did get a writing system, it's because they adopted kanji from China, and they started writing with that. And then even after they got kanji, it took another couple hundred of years for them to develop katakana and hiragana. That's the alphabets that you write with. And so Japanese history is just so rich. There's so much there. I lived in a place called Kamakura for about 6 months of my mission. And in Kamakura, there are temples and shrines everywhere. Our favorite thing to do in the mornings was we would exercise and we would go for a walk and see where we could find a new shrine that day, because we lived right in the middle of a bunch of them. So in my history class, we recently learned about the Kamakura period and the history behind the place where I lived for the last 6 months of my mission, and it was so interesting to me. So I guess I'll just share a little bit of that with you. So there was a family, so there's always been an emperor in Japanese history. The emperor is really important. It's believed that the emperor was descended from the gods who created Japan. And so there's always an emperor, and he's considered deity, basically. And there was one period of time when a certain family was marrying all of their daughters off to the emperor of Japan. It was the Fujiwara family. And eventually there was an emperor who was the child of a different mother, not a Fujiwara mother. And so he kind of decided to change things. And so he had two people who helped him. There's the Minamoto family and the Taira family. And he kind of favored I'm going to get this wrong. He favored one of them. I think it was the Taira family. He favored the Taira family over the Minamoto family. And the Minamoto family got mad, and there was a whole thing where the emperor got put in prison, and then one family broke him out, and the other family got mad, and the Taira family ended up killing all of the Minamoto family except for the oldest son and the youngest son. And that ended up being his downfall, because they were both samurai families, and the Taira family kind of took over the government. And after they kind of took things over, they became a lot like the Fujiwara family, and they lost a lot of the samurai values that they had had. So the Minamoto boys, the oldest son and the youngest son, got a bunch of samurai together who were angry, and they went and fought against the Taira family, and they won. And then the oldest Minamoto son, his name is Minamoto Yoritomo, something like that. He made a new government where there still was an emperor, but the emperor wasn't really in charge. and it was called the Kamakura Bakufu, or the Kamakura Shogunate. So he moved the capital of Japan from, it was in Kyoto at the time. He moved it from Kyoto to Kamakura, which is near Tokyo. It's maybe like an hour away from Tokyo. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's really close to Tokyo. And so he became it was called the shogunate. He was in charge of the government, basically, and this was before Japan was all united. So he was in charge of that part of Japan, I guess, and it was a samurai culture. And so in samurai culture, Zen Buddhism is a really big deal, and so that's why there's so many shrines in Kamakura where I served, and where I lived. So, but then, sadly enough, Minamoto ended up dying pretty soon after he established this new government, and his son was supposed to take over and become the new shogun, but the son's grandfather, so Minamoto's father-in-law, wanted to be in charge, so he killed his own grandson, which is really sad, and so he could become the shogun, and the mom didn't really do anything. Not really. It's kind of depressing. But then his other son, Minamoto's second son, was supposed to become the shogun, and then his nephew killed him. So then the father-in-law, his name was Hojo, became in charge, and his family led the government for a lot of years, and then people got sick of him, so they killed his family, and then another family was in charge, and then people got sick of that family, and so they killed that family. And basically, Japanese history is just really messy and really bloody and really complicated, but it's so cool, and I love it. So, yeah.